to make. All right, cool. So let's get started. When you first start a project, I really highly recommend copying and pasting the commands, because if you mess up anything right from the beginning, it can really mess with you. So I'm going to start this project. We're going to call it Greek Philosophers. And I know this takes a second, but I think it's worth it to start from the beginning. Oh, so this project is about Greek philosophers who love coffee, and they are going to pick their favorite coffees and then, like debate the virtues of those coffees with each other. So that's the idea behind this project. So let's get into that and run bundle add React Rails. And we'll run this Rails G React install. And then we'll go ahead and create the database. All right, from here, I like to just jump into VS Code. So I'm going to do code dot and put these side by side so we can use that. No, I don't like that. I'm going to put them the other way. There we go. And then I don't know if you all know this, but if you push Control backtick, it will give you a terminal in VS Code. And I find that really useful. I like to do things from here. So I'm going to create the models just right here. We're going to need a Rails G model. I'm just going to call them Philo, like Philos. Philo means loving, like you love something. And so I like that for this because they're like philosophers and they love coffee. It's perfect. So we'll call this Philo. I don't know if everyone knows this, but G stands for generate. And I think you can actually write out the word generate if you want to do Rails generate model. If that makes more sense to you, I believe you can also do it that way. And then we're going to do some attributes. We'll give them a name. You do not have to specify that this is a string, but just for clarity, I'm going to go ahead and write that. And they're going to also have a quote, and that will also be a string because it's a fairly short quote. All right. We're also going to need a coffee model. And coffee also has a name, and it's going to have notes, which will also be a string. Okay, now because this is a has many situation where the philosophers have many coffees, you have to include this Philos belongs to. And if you don't include that, it's fine. Hopefully you catch yourself really quick and you can just delete that model and then redo it. But the table has to belong to the philosophers. Otherwise you won't be able to do any more of the has many stuff. So just make sure you have that belongs to on your has many relationship. All right, so we've got these models. Let's create the controllers now. So we're going to need a Philos controller. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can actually from here, put in all of the functions for your controller. So if you just write index, show, new, create, edit, update, destroy, it will make that for you. And then you don't have to worry about not like accidentally leaving off ends or something. It just throws them in there right off the bat. And that can be super useful. I like that a lot. So the other controller we'll need is the coffees controller. And you always want to make these plural. The controller is always plural. And let's make that one. All right, so now we have our models and our controllers. The next thing that we want to do is seed the database. So I'm just going to open up seeds here. And we're going to want Faker, because that's just a really easy way to seed the database. It's like a no-brainer. As long as you can find the things you want on Faker, it's just so much easier. So it's required Faker. Now that actually won't work because I haven't added it to the gem file. So let's go to the gem file and throw in some gems here. You do this under development do, and I'm just going to copy paste this group of gems that are useful. The only one we're really using right at this moment is Faker. But these other ones are really nice to have, so we'll just throw those in there. All right. So for our seeds, we're going to want to do right at the top. I'm going to do destroy all for both the philo and the coffee. Because as I'm going along, I'm going to do like a DB seed probably a few times. And if I don't have them destroy it right at the beginning, then I'm just going to end up with a ton of seeds, like way more than I want in my database. And so anytime I run Rails DB seed with these two things at the top, it's just going to delete what was there before and just restart the seed file anew. So for the philosophers, I want 5 of them. So I'm going to do 5 times do, and I'm going to give these a name. I'll just call them Phil, yes. And you'll see why in just a second. So we're going to create these. They have a name, and I'm going to use Faker has Greek philosophers, which is super handy. So we'll throw that in there, and then a quote also from Faker. Thank you, Faker. All right, so that'll generate philosophers for us. 5 of them. Oh, but I also want to tell you, let's say you wanted to do this project, but you feel like the whole Greek philosophers thing is kind of sexist, because there's actually like female Greek philosophers that you just feel like should get their day in the sun. So what you can do is you can create your own array. If you can't find the information you want on Faker, this is an easy way to do it. I actually have these names right here. I'm going to grab them. Let's say these are all my favorite female philosophers, and you can just throw them in here in this array. And instead of doing this Faker right here, you can do @r dot sample, I believe. And that'll just give you a random one of these. Now, since I'm creating 5 and there are 5 here, but it's a sample, there's a chance that you'll get all 5, but because it's taking like a random sample, you might get multiples. So if you want them to all be unique, you would need to like do quite a few more of those probably. But that's an option for seeding. Actually, I'm just going to go back to my baker. And okay, so now these philosophers need to have coffees that are specifically theirs. And so inside of this do loop, we're going to do another do loop, and I think I'll just give them 3 copies. And so the reason why I assigned this philo create to Phil is so that I can use it here and do fill.coffees so that it's creating coffees for this particular philosopher. Create. And then these coffees also have a name, which I got from Faker. And they have notes. I'm impressed by anyone who can pick out notes in like wine or coffee. Like, good for you. I can't. Just tastes like coffee or wine to me. All right, so always end everything you start. So I ended that 3 times do. Now I'm ending the 5 times do. And this should work for us. Let's see. Oh, I want to go. Oh, I have to make sure that the philosophers even know that they have coffee. So what we want to do is go into Philo's RB, because these guys, they're just like not even aware that they have coffee. So what we need to do here is make sure that they are aware that they have many coffees. And while we're here, we also want to do dependent destroy, because when we destroy a philosopher, you also want to destroy the coffees that belong to that philosopher. And so in order to do that, you have to destroy the dependents. So this has to be in here. Otherwise, you would have like free floating coffees that belong to nobody. And that's no good. So always do that. Make sure that the thing that is at the top that has many something is aware that it has many somethings by going into the model and actually like writing that out. Let's save that. Okay, so now those are actually connected. I think that this would be a good time to get into this Ooh, good catch. Okay, so I changed the gem file and I didn't bundle. You always got to bundle after you change the gem file. You know what? I don't think I'm migrated either. Yeah, I should do that as well. Let's get this migrated. Okay, now we're in here. So I need to seed too, you guys. Okay, Rails DB seed. We need to make sure these seeds actually work. And here is an error. Notes. Yeah, that is an error, isn't it? Don't need 2 of those. That's confusing. Let's try this again. Unknown attribute philo underscore ID for coffee. Where am I?
At least you will not catch this error. Go to your files real quick.
Go where?
Go to your files and go to your migration. Migration and then second migration. Change that files on set to just singular. And then save that and then we migrate.
Okay.
You might have to drop, but I'm not sure. Check your schema check your schema real quick. Yeah, you're gonna have to drop because line 21 is looking for plural.
Okay. Did I do that in my model? Did I make it plural?
Yeah, when you were making it.
Wait, Rails G model.
No, for the coffee. That belongs to should be singular.
Oh, good catch. All right, so let's drop this and migrate again. Oh, we gotta create it too.
Need to recreate.
Rails DB. Okay, that fixed that. Let's see if it'll seed now. Cool. All right, now we can check out this in Pry. So we should be able to do philo.all and get all of them. So here are our philosophers. And then also philo.first.copies, I think should give us all the copies of that person. Is that not the right? Philo first copies. Let's see. Hold on a second. Okay, there's our first guy. Okay, this was working when I did it earlier. Is this? I wonder if this is a leftover mess from accidentally doing that plural.
You can check if you have copies real quick.
What's that?
Like do a copies at all. Check to see if you have all your copies. Like just enter your Rails and see if copies got made.
That's interesting. It ran, but it didn't create them. Okay. The only thing that I have different on the one that I worked on earlier is that I just called this one P1 and this P1. That shouldn't make any difference. Oh, wait, would it even show all the copies? Because they belong to a certain philosopher. So is it, would it show all of them? I don't think it would do that.
It should P1 a global variable.
What's that?
Try making P1 a global variable.
Okay. I'm just gonna try it outside of the loop and see what in the world. Well, I guess you can't do that because it has to be connected by an ID. All right. Oh, hold on a second. See this. That philosophers copies. Let me try to make one in here. Let's see. It's been a while since I've done this. You just, let's see, do it like this, right? Oh wait, how would you do, let's see. Michael, in Pry, how would you do, like, create a coffee for this philosopher?
Assign P2 to like philo.first. And then do P2.coffee.create.
And that should be plural, right?
Yes.
Copies dot create, and then I'll just call this black because that's as creative as I'm gonna get right now. So this has a philosopher's ID. It doesn't have its own ID. This is annoying. I did this earlier and it was working. Love. Gotta love these bugs. All right. I don't know if it has to do with this seeds file because this is exactly what I did. Hmm. Do you think that that whole like plural thing was unresolved somewhere else? And
No, because when you drop your database, it should just like get rid of your database that you had before.
Mhm.
And then by recreating and then migrating it, it should make the new changes.
And that's the only place it would have been changed. Let's see if copying and pasting this did anything. Okay, there's all our guys. And then dot oops. Copies.
Did you do copies belongs to Philo in the copy model?
In the coffee model.
So copy.rb. Yeah, you did.
Oh, wait.
That's where
Yeah.
it's messed up. Thank you. Okay. There was one more spot. All right. We should be good here now.
Interesting question.
I didn't ask you a question. Siri is always being too helpful. All right. Okay, there they all are. Huggy cake. That sounds yummy. All right, so if you see that this philosopher ID is 21 on all of these. So these all belong to that specific philosopher. So we're good on seeds now. The next thing that we want to do is go to the controller. I'm not ready to use this. This is kind of just like in the way. Let's do this. Okay. So let's start with, oh, here's a shortcut for you guys. You can start typing the first name of the controller and then just type con and it'll show up. All right, so this is nice because it's already, all these functions are already here for us. So let's start by just filling this. I'm just going to fill this entirely out for, here, what time is it? I want to make sure, is it seriously 4:43? Okay, we got to move fast. I'm going to copy and paste this because I want to get to the, shoot, time goes by so fast, you guys. Holy cow. All right, so I'm just going to paste these in. You guys know, I think, how to do like the top controller, right? And the whole purpose of this homework review is to go over the has-many relationship. And so I'm just going to go ahead and try to like high speed through just getting this top one out. So I'm just getting the components in here. And let's see. Hopefully you recognize what I'm doing here. That this is like becoming familiar to you. So we're just like, one of the things I wanted to point out was that the controller is the manager in charge of connecting the model with the view. And so what we're doing here is look at this index. You've got philo.all. You guys know that that's getting something from the database, right? Using this model. And so this line is getting the stuff from the database. And then line 5, render component philos, that's saying, hey, send to this view, philos, these props, right? So we're connecting this database information to the view on the front end. And this is what the controller does, is connects those two. So I'm just going to keep popping this stuff in. And you know what's really important is this before action. Let me make sure we get that one. So this, before anything else happens, at least for show, update, edit, and destroy, it's going to run this function, which I'm going to throw down here, which is going to find the individual philosopher. There we go. And so while I'm down here in the private section, I'll just throw in this. We also need the philosopher params. And I always see this, whoops, above this one. So I'm just going to move it above. I don't know that it matters. Come on, Elise. Let's see, option. Hey, do you guys know that you can like highlight something, click option, and then like move it around? That's super helpful too. Now you know. All right, we've got everything except destroy. So that one's just saying when you destroy the philosopher, redirect to the root path. which we should probably make sure our routes are good. I forgot to tell it to skip routes, and so it just made all these for us. When you create your controllers, yeah, no, wait, yeah, that's where you put skip routes. I don't want to put those in there, but I'm just going to delete them and do this. Resources, silos do. This is just the simple way to get your basic routes. And that should be good for routes. So we've gotten the controller filled out. We've got our seeds. We've done, I think, all of our backend stuff. So now what we want to do, well, first of all, I've got 127 things going on here. So you want to make sure that you commit these. I'm just going to call this init because it was mostly, I probably should have been putting those in as I did like the controller and stuff. So try to remember to commit frequently. So we did all this backend stuff. We're kind of done with model, controller. Let's get into JavaScript components. And you can do this just right from there, or you can do it from the terminal. There we go. And just run this touch app JavaScript components, and then whatever the component is that you want to create. And it will create that component there. Or you're also totally fine to just do it this way, where you just do a new one here. And I'm just going to go ahead and do it in the terminal because I've got these commands at my fingertips. So there we go. So these are the four components, the four like main components that you're going to want. And I'm trying to think if I want to, yeah, I think I'm just gonna copy and paste more stuff. Are you guys following following along well enough that like a copy paste sort of situation is going to be okay for us to try to get down into like the coffees? Okay, cool. I'm getting lots of thumbs up. All right, good. So after you create all these components, one thing that I like to do is just like throw in some basic thing to make sure that they're all working. Speaking of that, let's get this going. I'm gonna go back to my terminal to run it. Okay. Oh, I don't have a root route. I'm gonna want to do that. We're gonna do root. That's why it's not working. I was like, am I in the right project? Let's do yeah, because that's a controller, so it's plural. And just send it to the index. And this should actually give an error because we didn't make anything. Yeah, that's good. It doesn't know where to go because I didn't export anything from my component. So that is a great error. It's totally fine. All right, so I want to copy paste this, but I also kind of want to do it in an order that makes sense. It's not just like, boom, here's a bunch of code. So you always do import React from React, otherwise it's not going to work. You're setting up this component, Philos, and then in the controller, you guys remember we, let me grab my controller. Icon. For the index, we sent these props, Philos, which is all of them, right? All the philosophers. So I'm just gonna grab these just to like illustrate what's going on here. This is what's coming through to this component. That's what we sent to this component. So the way that we can get that is, I mean, you can just do props dot Philos, but I like to just pull it off so that you're not dealing with like props dot Philos dot ID. So we're just gonna pull it off, and that's how you do that. Let's just close this stuff so that it stops whining about it. Okay, export default. You always want to make sure you do this because you'll get an error and it'll be like, there's nothing here. So this is your basic component. You need a return though. And I like to just do something like this. Like give it a heading. See if I did everything right there. There it is, our first page. Cool. So that's the bones of a component. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste what I have here, which is mapping out the philosophers using what we sent through props, and also our links for navigation, to navigating to the other pages. And so we're pulling off Philos here. We're returning, oh, messed up all my little things. Oh, it was only that div. Okay. And so here we've got this add philosopher, and that's going to Philos new, which is the path for the form, you know, to add a philosopher. And then we took this Philos prop from props and mapped through it to put out the name here. I'm going to show it over here so it's more clear. And so I mapped through them all. I like it to look like a little nicer. So I put this little divider right here. I don't know if you guys have used this, the HR, but that's nice to just divide it up and make it look better. And I put breaks in between the lines. But so essentially what we have here is that we're mapping through the philosophers, grabbing their name, and then doing the navigating to show edit pages, and then just to like the delete function. So that should work already, I think. Yeah, there it goes. Okay. So we were able to delete that. And let's go to the individual philosophers page and just grab a very basic component for that. So we've got this philosopher. We're pulling off the ID, name, and quote from this specific philosopher. And then I've got it just showing here. So I've just got his ID number, his name, and then the quote. And I also have it linking to coffees. And this is what I'm trying to get to here. So maybe we'll, yeah, I think I'll just leave the edit and add functions with the philosophers alone. We'll like leave that behind us and just move on to the coffees. because it's not terribly different, but it is different to be the many part of the relationship, because it's just one layer down, right? So let's start with the controller. And this is our coffee's controller. And I'm going to do this one slower, because we're finally at what we want to be at here. All right, so before we even get going, we want to have certain things happening. And what we want is, before anything at all, we've got to set the philosopher, because the coffees don't exist without this philosopher. You have to have his ID to do anything with the coffees. So before anything else, you've got to set the philosopher. And then we also want a before action that is for setting the coffee, the individual coffee. But we only really need an individual coffee for the show page, the edit page, the update, and the delete. Because like you want to delete a specific coffee, you want to update a specific coffee. For edit, you need that specific coffee's information so that you can pre-fill the form with its information. And then for show, obviously you want to show that individual coffee's delicious notes and name. So that's just to start with. Now we did this, but these actually don't exist. So let's jump down here and create ourselves a private section. And we want to do this set follow, and always just end it because you don't want to forget that. I mean, it's a fairly easy error to find and handle, but it's nice to just end everything and not have to deal with it. So we're going to do @philo equals philo.find. We're going to find this individual guy using params and philo ID. And then we need to set, I never told you guys this, but you can ask questions. If you have questions or comments, feel free to turn your mic on and say something.
Doing a great job.
What's that?
You're doing a great job. It's very helpful.
Oh, good. That's good feedback. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So now we're going to set this individual coffee. And this is going to be for this particular philosopher's. See what I'm doing here? Philo. This particular philosopher's coffees. We're going to find this coffee by its ID. So now we've got those set up. This is important, like the important foundation before you start all these other, I mean, you can do it in whatever order you want, but this makes a lot of sense to me to be like, okay, because this is a has-many relationship, I have to have the parent. You got to have the parent there. Can't set these children free. Okay. You'll get DCFS called on you. Make sure you have the parent there. Then you're also going to need the individual coffee for these specific CRUD actions in order to do those. And so we just set those down there. While we're in the private section, let's go ahead and do the coffee params as well. So for coffee, the name and notes and nothing else. Yeah, so, and for that coffee params, it is just used in update and create. And that's why we need that, because that's taking something into the database and we need to make sure it's only taking name and notes. And so that's why we need those. All right, so for the index, we're just going to render the component coffees. And that's like exactly what we were doing on the Philosophers page, right? But for this one, we're going to need the Philosopher too. Remember, you have to have your parent with you. So we're going to call, we're going to send these guys in as props. And that's important for like navigating. You have to have the Philosopher's ID in order to do some of the navigation. And then, yeah, it's important for a couple of reasons. So you're going to want to make sure that you send in a Philosopher. And then the copies, of course. So that is our index. Does everyone know, like, this is a hash? I mean, you know that, but like, so these are the keys that you're sending through to the component, Philo and coffees. And that's the word we're going to use to pull out the information we want. And this is the value, which is coming from down here. It's this, this philo.find. This is what we're sending through. And then this value, philo.coffees, just that guy, right? And his coffees. So that's what we're sending through to the front end. And so let's do the show one. So this is just one coffee. And we are going to send through props here. It's this coffee one. And then let's see, for new, let's render new coffee. Oh, by the way, you'll see people do it. So this verbally makes more sense, new coffee. But if you want it to be more organized in your components, it actually looks better and is more organized when you have like a lot of has many relationships to do Philo edit and Philo new. And, you know, so when you see people doing it the other way around and you're like, well, that doesn't sound as good. It is easier to find things in the components if you do it that way, but I just did it this way because verbally it sounds better. So that says componder. What even is that? Component. And then for the new one, we're going to do props. A Philosopher, because you're going to be adding a new coffee to this guy's like list of coffees, and so you need his info. For create, whoa, we're going to do @coffee equals philo.coffees.new. I'm going to create a new coffee, running it through these coffee params. Oh no, coffee's starting to look weird. Okay, and then now we need to know if coffee, if it's saved. And if it did save, we're just going to redirect to Philo coffee's path. And I'm going to show you why the heck I'm using that. I don't know if you guys know where that comes from. So I'm just going to show you this. If you go to Rails info routes, we use this a lot, right? We're like, oh, what's the path? We got to find the path. But these are also useful here when you're redirecting to. What I'm redirecting to is this Philo coffees path. And so that's just going to send us back to this, where all the coffees are listed out after we create one. All right, we're going to do an else here. We're not going to do anything with that right now. You guys will start doing things with that later. But let's not worry about it now. And then for edit, again, we're just going to render the component. We're going to say, hey, controller, send this information to edit coffee. Whoops. And here's what I want you to send. We're going to send the Philosopher. And we're going to send, oh, let's close this again because it's messing things up. And the coffee. All right, for this update function, we want to do if the coffee updates, and you got to check with the coffee params, then we're going to just redirect it to the Philo coffees path again. And in my notes on both of these, it says to do the philo.id. And I actually wasn't entirely sure. Oh, that's probably because you have to make sure, because look at this. Philo coffees path, right? This is the path, but it has an ID in here. It probably just needs to be fed that ID. I bet that's why that's there. All right, and then let's fill out this destroy. So you guys can see how this is a little bit different than the top level, the Philosopher's controller. It's just a little bit more complicated, but not too much. You've got all these same things. You've got all the same functions, but you're just going to add this set philo because you've got to have the philo. And you just end up passing a few more props because you're going to need those for navigation and for a couple of other things. So let's finish this destroy, and then we'll have 5 minutes to do something more. I don't know what yet. Let's see. So we will destroy that coffee, which should be a crime. And then redirect it to the Philo coffees path again, which is that. So this is what your controller looks like for the has many relationship. And look, I could have saved after I created those files. That was a whole different thing than this controller. So just get in the habit of saving frequently, of committing frequently. So this is both the controller and some components. All right, so on this front end, we don't have any of the coffee components. I'm trying to think which one is going to be the most useful because I'm sure we're only going to be able to go over one of them. So let me see. Not that one. I'll just do the main one. Yeah, let's just do coffees. Okay, so let's just create one for now. And I always just go to the like the equivalent coffees, Philos, and I'll copy and paste if I haven't gotten too far on it, you know. And ooh, this is fun. Yeah, let's go back to the coffee controller and grab for the index. Let's grab this to remind ourselves what's coming through. Whoops. Hey, buddy, will you go pop your elbow somewhere else? Thanks. All right, so this is what's coming through is the Philosopher and the Philosopher's coffees. And of course, we're going to need to change a bunch of this stuff. So let's pull off the singular Philosopher and all of the coffees. And then our coffees. Add a coffee. Here, let me do this again. This is in the way again. Okay, so this add a coffee, this is not going to be the right path for it, right? We need post. Oh wait, is it post? No, because we're just looking at it, it's new. So we're going to need that new route. So this one right here, Philos, Philo ID, coffees, new. But we can't just be like Philos, Philo ID, you know, that's not going to work. You have to actually have the Philosopher's ID. And so that's why it's vital that you get this Philo coming through your, like being sent from your controller. So that way we can do some interpolation here and do philo.id. But as you can see, it's not lighting up, it's not doing anything. That's because you have to have backticks when you do that. And because you're like interpolating, you also have to have this opening and closing curly brackets. Now it's lighting up like it's supposed to. So that's not the right path either though. We've got to put coffees in here. So now this is what it looks like. So when something belongs to something else, you're going to start getting these longer routes where you have to include that something else's, like the parent's ID. This child goes nowhere without its parent. So you always need to include that. And that's why it's vital that you pass it down or that you send it in from the controller. Let's go down through this some more. So we're not mapping through the philosophers because we actually only have one philosopher. So we're going to map through the coffees. Let's make this a C to represent an individual coffee. We'll do the coffee's name. And then for this show page, let's look over here. See, we need a coffee show right here. It's a show page. So this is the route that we need. We need the Philosopher's ID, the coffees, and then the coffee ID. So this was mapping through all of the philosophers, which is why it just had p.id. But that's not doing that anymore because we only have one philosopher and we brought him in. So we can just do philo.id because he is in here and he is available. Oh, it's 5:15, you guys. I'm gonna finish this page and unless anyone tells me different. So this route here, we've got the philo.id. We need coffees. And then the coffee ID. This is starting to get kind of long, huh? So c.id, because we're mapping through all the coffees and we need this particular coffee's ID, which is being represented by this C. So we're doing c.id. And that will show this individual coffees page. So now for this edit, we've got to go through the philosopher's ID to his copies. And then we need that specific copies ID, right? Because you're not going to edit, I don't know, the whole group of coffees. You have to edit this individual coffee and then edit. And so that is how you do that route. And for this last one, it's this delete method. So let's look over here for coffees delete. Destroy. And it's this right here. So it's philo ID, coffees ID. So really it's the exact same as this. I'm just going to go ahead and type it out anyways. Coffees and then that coffees ID. And that's how you do it for the child. You just have to make sure you have the parent involved, and so that you can, do this navigation, and also like the delete function and stuff. You've got to have the route for it. So that is what I have for you. I had so much more, but I guess it would have taken like all day to do it because I skipped over a ton. But does anyone have questions on this?
At least for me, one of the things I've struggled with the most, and I'll definitely want to know where the recording of this ends up, is how to, at least on the has many, how to like efficiently pass the information, for instance, in yours, like the philo into the individual like has many links. I found that really challenging when I'm trying to set mine up.
Like into the.
So like for mine, if you're doing stores and products, trying to make sure that when you're searching products that you've also passed in the appropriate store that product is in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But do you mean like here, if you're passing in, oh, I see. Do you mean like from that individual?
So in your controller, your coffees controller,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm looking at your show and if you want to show a specific coffee, right?
Yeah.
So that's putting you into your coffee JS file, because that's what you're rendering. Where are you passing for that specific coffee? Where are you also passing the specific philo that you're trying to find their coffee, if that makes sense? Because you're not just trying to find a specific coffee, you're trying to find a specific coffee from a philo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't see where you pass that in that show function.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because here's the thing is like my show coffee page. Whoops, that's not what I want. Oh, I don't have one. I'm like trying to search for it. Can't find it. That's because there isn't one. This is what it looks like, and it works. So let's walk through this. I think it's because, let's find out where this coffee is coming from. So this is coming from this philosopher here.
So it's already set down there to include the philosopher ID as a part of it.
If you're looking, Elise, if you want to go to your schema real quick.
Sure. I'll do it this way.
Your philosopher ID is a part of your copies because of that relationship there on like Philo's ID on line 21. So you can get the Philo ID from that.
Well, right, I get that that it is part of the Philo ID, but as far as which Philo ID, because your browser is going to want to know which Philo you're referencing so that it can display the appropriate copies for that Philo.
Okay. So show these copies.
I think you did answer it in your controller in the sense that you defined at coffee in your private section for your controller. You defined at coffee to include at Philo, and you got your Philo from whichever Philo you happen to be on when you were looking for their coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's where it got passed through. That was the part that mine was getting tripped up at, I think. I think if
Yeah,
my question makes sense, because otherwise you're just asking for coffee, but you're not specifying which Philo you want to know their coffee.
yes. And on this page, if you wanted, okay, other TAs, help me if I'm wrong here, but so I just told it to go home because that was the easiest. But if you wanted a route here that included that philosopher, I think you would have to send in that philosopher as props to get him into this route.
Because your philosopher ID is a part of your coffee props, like you could just extract the philosopher ID in like a part of your line 5, like
this.
yeah, yeah, and then have that be the ID that you go back to.
Doo, doo, doo.
So in the file that you're in right now, not just the variable name, but where is the actual ID of the Philo you're trying to accessing contained right now in this particular file?
In this, in the
In the
coffee.js,
coffee.js, what variable or constant or what in this file right now knows which Philo she's referencing when, is it the .coffee, the props.coffee on 5?
so
like,
that
what-
would be the controller going and just showing the singular. Yeah, that is the control. That would, you would go back to the controller for that one.
Sorry, did you want me to go back here? Is that what you were asking about? Or
You're talking to me or Michael?
TA Michael, what were you saying?
No, I was trying to answer his question. The controller is the one that is telling it which
No, I know.
philosopher.
No, I know what's actually telling it. And what I'm asking is when you're in that nested coffee file, which is nested inside of all of your files. So if you go back to your coffees,
Mhm.
where like there has to be something in this file that contains the information of which Philo you're referencing. Where is it in this file? Even if it was just passed as a props, or like how did the information for which Philo you're referencing get to this file so that it knows what to show you, to render?
So what's rendering this component coffees, right? Is the controller is saying, hey, send this information to coffees. So
Yes.
So what you're asking is like, how does it know?
Well, we were in the show,
Oh, okay. So
and here you're not specifying Philo the way you were in index. So where is the Philo for that specific coffee making it to show?
I think just from, well, it's from this, because what we're sending is this.
So at coffee contains the Philo through the set Philo function right above it.
So
Yes,
it gets
and this
the
is where the idea is coming from, is that params.
yeah.
So the set Philo function is getting the idea from the params Philo ID, and then it is setting that to at Philo. And then below it, you're setting coffee to that same at Philo, and then getting the params for the coffee. So then when you go back to your coffees.js,
Mhm.
that coffees is being passed as a param, which contains the at philo in it, or as a prop, sorry.
Oh, here, I
Right.
think we're talking about this one, just coffee singular, right?
Yeah, coffee, sorry. It's being passed as a props to this function, but that props contains both the coffee ID and the philo ID. Is that correct?
Yeah, right?
I'm just following the trail of how that philo ID gets into this function.
Hmm.
It's philo underscore ID, which is a column in your coffee table. So the philo underscore ID is a column in the coffee table because the coffee belongs to a philo. So it has the coffee underscore attribute, which should be the ID of the philo it belongs to.
Yeah. Well, I think you were also asking about the whole navigation thing.
Because I'm asking, like, let's say you're on, then you're to your right, Philosopher 22 Solon, right?
Yeah.
The information for you're referring to Solon has to be tracked all the way through to its well, to the foreign keys basically. And it looks like you were doing that through your private controller or your private, where you were setting the at, for instance, if you were on the Solon at Solon, right? Because if we're on this Solon page here on the right, if you're setting your at philo, or where was it? Yeah, your at philo to Solon, because that's where you were. And then your at coffee becomes at Solon, because by definition, your at coffee is whatever philo you were. Then you have to pass that at coffee as the params to the next, to the JS that you're going to from your show controller. I get the structure of it, but I want to see the not actually see, but I want to make sure that I understand the actual trail of how all the information is continually kept through the trail.
Yeah, I learned more about that making this presentation and from what Michael just said too. So I think you just keep learning deeper and deeper as you go along. I don't know. James, did you have a response to that? I guess my time's up too. I should stop sharing.
I guess my response would be,